My wife Rachel said she needed a quiet weekend to herself, some downtime at her friend's cabin near Oneonta. Something about it felt off. Rachel's not the spontaneous type. Her world runs on calendars, routines, and grocery lists with subheadings. So when she packed up a duffel and kissed me goodbye that Friday morning, I didn't say anything out loud. But something in my gut whispered, this isn't what it looks like. I told myself I was being paranoid. Told myself she deserved a break. After all, we've been married 13 years. 2 kids, a house we're still paying off, and a car that wheezes when you start it. She's earned a weekend away. Still, by the time Friday evening rolled around, I was in my truck with a bag of takeout from her favorite Thai spot and a pit in my stomach. I told myself I'd surprise her. But let's be honest, people don't surprise their wives at remote cabins unless they're looking for something. It took me a little under 2 hours to get there. Long enough to think through a dozen scenarios in my head. Most of them ended with me feeling foolish and Rachel laughing it off over spring rolls and a glass of wine. But that's not how it went. When I pulled into the gravel driveway, the first thing I noticed was the other car. Not just any car. A black Jeep Cherokee. Lucas's car. My brother's car. Now, maybe you're thinking, could be coincidence. Yeah, that's what I told myself too. For about 7 seconds. Then I saw the second wine glass on the porch table. And her flip-flops beside his boots. And just like that, everything I hadn't wanted to believe crystallized into something undeniable. They were inside. Together. I didn't storm in. Didn't knock. Didn't scream. That's not me. I just sat back in the truck, hands on the wheel, Thai food cooling on the seat beside me. And I waited. Maybe I wanted proof. Maybe I just wasn't ready to see it for myself. But about 20 minutes later, they stepped out onto the porch. Rachel, in one of my old college t-shirts, the one she always used to sleep in when we were first married. And Lucas, with that casual, smug look he always wore like a second skin. She laughed at something he said, touched his arm like it belonged to her. And then, she kissed him. Not a quick peck. Not a friend's goodbye. A kiss. A real one. Slow. Familiar. I didn't feel rage. That was the strangest part. I felt, still, like my brain just froze the moment and hung it on the wall so I could stare at it for the rest of my life. I didn't drive away immediately. I waited until they went back inside. Then I backed the truck out, careful not to let the gravel crunch too loud, and turned onto the main road like nothing had happened. It wasn't until I was 15 miles out that I pulled over and realized I'd been gripping the steering wheel so tight my hands were shaking. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I just sat there on the side of a country road, watching the sun sink down like it didn't just watch my marriage fall apart. And I knew in that moment, nothing would ever be the same. When I got home that night, the house was just as I'd left it. Still. Quiet. Clean in the way only an empty house can be. The kids were with my sister for the weekend, and the only sound was the fridge humming in the kitchen like it didn't have a care in the world. I dropped the bag of takeout onto the counter, untouched, and sat down at the table. You ever notice how, when something breaks in your life, the rest of the world just keeps moving? The faucet still drips. The clock still ticks. And your wife, the one who swore before God and state to stand beside you, is lying to your face while warming someone else's hands. Someone with your last name. My brother, Lucas, is 2 years younger than me. Growing up, he was always the golden one. The charming one. The one who could talk his way out of anything or into anything. Girls liked him. Teachers let him off the hook. My mom called him her wild one, like that was something to be proud of. Me? I was the one who fixed things. Quiet. Steady. Boring, maybe. But dependable. That was always our dynamic. He broke it. I fixed it. So it almost made sense, in the most twisted way imaginable, that even my marriage wasn't immune. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't even try. I just sat in the living room with the lights off, replaying the scene on the porch over and over until it didn't even sting anymore. And sometime around 4 a.m., I realized something important. I didn't want revenge. I wanted the truth. Because if Rachel could do that, and Lucas could do that, then what else were they hiding? How long had it been going on? Where did it start? How much of my marriage was even real? And most of all, how stupid did they think I was? The next day, I didn't call Rachel. I didn't text Lucas. I didn't mention it to anyone. I did something far more dangerous. I started paying attention. She came home Sunday evening like nothing happened. Said the cabin was beautiful, but the Wi-Fi was terrible. Said she missed the kids. Kissed me on the cheek and asked if I'd remembered to buy milk. She smelled like campfire smoke and the shampoo she always borrows from hotels. I said, "Yeah, milk's in the fridge." And that was it. We sat at the table that night, just like always. The kids talked about school. Rachel scrolled through her phone between bites. I passed the mashed potatoes. And not once, did she look me in the eye. Over the next week, I kept watching. Little things. Her phone always face down. Her laugh when she texted someone. The late-night grocery runs that didn't come with groceries. I checked the mileage on her car every night. Checked the timestamps on her credit card statements. Checked the frequently visited map suggestions on her GPS. Lucas's apartment came up more than once. I didn't need a private investigator. I just needed a notepad and a clear head. One night, I told her I was working late. I even left the house, drove to the gas station, parked, and waited. Sure enough, her car pulled out of the driveway 30 minutes later. I followed. Not fast. Not close. Just enough to keep her taillights in view. She didn't go to the store. She didn't go to Emily's. She drove 20 minutes out of town, down a quiet road that led to a place I knew too well. Lucas's house. I parked a block away and waited. Watched the lights flick on. Watched the silhouette of her walking inside. Watched the front door close behind her like it had done this many times before. And then I just sat there. No emotion. No panic. Just this strange, hollow confirmation of something I already knew. She stayed there for nearly 2 hours. When she left, I didn't follow. I waited until she was out of sight, then walked right up to his front porch. I didn't knock. Didn't ring the bell. Just stood there for a while. I wanted to see if the door would open. If he'd see me. If there'd be any sign of guilt in his face. But nothing happened. So I turned around and left. Because here's the thing. You don't confront people like that right away. You give them time. Time to lie. Time to get comfortable. Time to believe they're getting away with it. Because the moment they think they've won, that's when you strike. I went home that night and kissed my kids goodnight like nothing had changed. I looked at Rachel when she walked through the door and asked if she found everything she needed at the store. She smiled, said, "Yeah, just the usual." And I nodded, smiled back. Because I wasn't ready to burn the house down yet. Not until I was holding the match, the gas can, and the insurance policy. Hiring a private investigator isn't something you do lightly. It's admitting, not just to the world, but to yourself, that trust is gone. For a guy like me, it felt like crossing a line I never wanted to see in my marriage, let alone step over. But once I watched Rachel walk into Lucas's place like she belonged there, that line vanished. A buddy of mine, Mark, used to be a sheriff's deputy. He left the force a few years back and started his own firm. Quiet, discreet. Knew how to keep things off the books. When I called him, I didn't need to explain much. Just said, "It's Rachel." And Lucas. There was a pause. Then, "How far do you want to go?" I answered without hesitation. Far enough that there's no room left for lies. Mark got to work fast. By the end of the week, he had motion sensors set up near Lucas's front porch, a camouflage trail camera pointed at the side yard, and a tiny mic planted in the hallway just outside the bedroom. I didn't ask how he did it. Didn't care. All I knew was that he was going to bring me the truth, and I was finally ready to look it in the face. 3 days later, he showed up at my door holding a black USB drive. Didn't say much. Just handed it to me, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "You sure you're ready for this?" I nodded. He left, and I stood there, staring at the tiny piece of plastic in my palm like it weighed 100 pounds. I didn't go to the living room. Didn't turn on the big screen. Instead, I took my old laptop out to the garage, poured myself a cup of stale coffee, and opened the file. The video was timestamped. 2 nights ago, 11:42 p.m. It started with Rachel's voice. Soft. Familiar. I could tell she was in the kitchen. I heard the clink of a wine glass. Her laugh. Then came Lucas. He walked up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. She leaned into him like it was second nature. And then they kissed. Not the awkward kind. Not new or nervous. The kind of kiss you give when you know exactly what the other person wants and how to give it to them. The camera angle wasn't perfect, but it didn't need to be. Because when they moved to the couch, it became crystal clear. Clothes came off. Whispers got louder. And then came the part that'll stick with me for the rest of my life. Rachel, breathing heavy, laughing softly, said, "He has no clue. God, he's so slow." Lucas chuckled. "Dan's the kind of guy who'd thank you for cheating if you brought him dinner afterward." They both burst out laughing. And then Rachel added, "I swear, Sometimes I think he's not even a real man. I didn't move, didn't blink. Just sat there as the video played on, a slow, quiet unraveling of every illusion I'd ever clung to. The intimacy didn't bother me as much as I thought it would. It was the words. The way they talked about me like I was furniture. A fool. A punchline. That's what broke me. Not the betrayal of the body, but the betrayal of the respect. They didn't just cheat. They humiliated me, tore me down with their hands, and then laughed while they swept the pieces under the rug. When the video ended, I closed the laptop. No shouting. No smashed glass. No storming over to his apartment with a bat in my hand. No. I just sat there. And I made a plan. Because now, I wasn't suspicious. I wasn't uncertain. I wasn't just a husband watching his wife slip away. I was a man with the truth. And sooner or later, that truth was going to burn down their little fantasy. There's a strange thing that happens when someone breaks your heart and then offers you a piece of it back. You want to believe them, even if everything inside you screams not to. When Rachel told me she was pregnant, I froze. Not out of anger, not even suspicion, but something else. Hope. I didn't expect it, but it came anyway, like an old song you forgot you loved. She was glowing. That's the word people use, and it was true. Her cheeks flushed, hands nervously folded over her stomach, eyes misty with a mix of fear and excitement. It's early, she said, but I wanted you to be the first to know. I didn't say anything at first. Just stared at her, trying to match this woman with the one I'd watched in grainy video footage doing things no wife should do. But in that moment, she didn't look like a liar. She looked like Rachel. The version from before. Before the distance. Before Lucas. Before I knew. Is it? I cleared my throat. Is it mine? Her eyes widened. A flicker of something, surprise? Guilt? It passed too fast to catch. Of course it's yours, she said softly. Dan, who else would it be? She reached for my hand. And for some reason, I let her. Maybe I was just tired. Tired of being the detective. Tired of playing the fool. Tired of carrying the weight of knowing and pretending I didn't. Maybe a part of me just wanted something good to hold on to. So I nodded. And for the next few days, I let myself believe it. I imagined the nursery. A name. The feel of a tiny hand curling around my finger. And I thought, maybe this is the reset. Maybe we start over. Maybe this is the reason for all the pain to get here. But lies have a way of uncoiling when left alone. And this one didn't stay still for long. It started with a date. I was driving home from work, windows down, thinking about the baby, when I remembered something strange. The last time Rachel and I were intimate, it was nearly 2 months ago. A rare night where the distance between us shrank just long enough for something to happen. But only once. And even then, it felt forced. Like she was trying to distract me. So she was really 6 or 7 weeks along, like she claimed. It was possible, but barely. And that barely started scratching at the edge of my peace. That night, while she slept beside me, deeper than I'd seen in months, I got up and went into the garage, turned on my laptop, pulled up the folder I'd sworn not to open again. Surveillance_February. I watched a video from exactly 6.5 weeks ago. Lucas's place. Rachel arrives at 9:04 p.m., leaves at 11:38 p.m. And in between? Well, nothing I hadn't already seen. Except now, it had new weight, new meaning. That visit, that exact night, fell right in the window she claimed the baby was conceived. It didn't disprove anything, but it didn't help her case either. The next morning, she was making eggs in the kitchen, humming. I asked casually, when's the first appointment? She looked up, smiling. Next week. Tuesday. Want to come? I nodded. Wouldn't miss it. But I wasn't going to hear the baby's heartbeat. I was going to ask for a paternity test. Not because I wanted to prove her wrong, but because I needed to know if I could let myself believe again, or if this was just one more lie in a long, slow betrayal. That afternoon, I found myself parked outside Lucas's building. I didn't go in. Just sat there, watching. His car was gone. Probably at work. But his life? His plans? I could feel them circling like vultures. Whatever this child was, truth or manipulation, it was part of something bigger. Something I still hadn't fully seen. The envelope came in the mail like any other. No flashing lights. No warning label. Just plain white, with my name on it and a return address from a private diagnostics lab in Syracuse. It was heavier than it should have been. Not in weight. In truth. I sat at the kitchen table for 10 full minutes before I opened it. Rachel was upstairs, humming again, folding baby clothes she ordered online last week. She'd been doing that a lot lately. Nesting. acting like everything was normal. Like we were building something together. We weren't. I slid my thumb under the seal and pulled out the single sheet of paper. There it was, in black and white. Paternity result, excluded. Probability of paternity, 0%. I folded the page neatly, tucked it back into the envelope, stared at my reflection in the microwave door. There it was. Final. The baby wasn't mine. The hope? Dead. I waited until after dinner. Until the kids were in bed. Until the house was quiet. Rachel was in the living room, curled up with a blanket and a mug of tea, watching some show where people pretend to be in love on islands. I stood in the doorway for a long time, just watching her. And in that moment, I realized something strange. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even heartbroken anymore. What I felt was focused. Like a man who spent months walking through smoke and has finally stepped out the other side. Rachel, I said calmly. She muted the TV. Yeah, we need to talk. She looked up, wary. Is everything okay? No, I said. But it's going to be. She followed me into the dining room. I didn't sit. I just placed the envelope on the table and slid it across to her. What's this? Read it. She hesitated, then opened it, slow, like she already knew what was inside. Her face changed almost instantly. Eyes wide. Shoulders tense. She looked up at me, mouth open, but I raised my hand. Don't, I said. Don't lie. Don't stall. Don't insult either of us. She closed her mouth. Good. I took a step closer. You've been lying to me for almost 2 years. I have the videos. The recordings. The timeline. I know everything, Rachel. She started to shake her head, but I didn't stop. You and Lucas, behind my back, in my house and my life. You treated me like I was stupid. Like I wouldn't notice. Like I didn't matter. Her eyes welled up. But I wasn't done. This child, I said, pointing at the paper, was your last hope of dragging me back into the lie. Of making me stay. Of making me think something real was left between us. I leaned forward. But it's not just cheating anymore. Her brows furrowed. What are you talking about? You didn't just betray your husband, Rachel. You participated in a coordinated, deliberate plan to deceive, manipulate, and defraud me. Daniel, no. I raised my voice for the first time in months. Stop. She froze. I pulled a second envelope from my pocket and tossed it on the table. She flinched when it landed. What's that? Evidence, I said. From your boyfriend's notebook. The one where he outlined how he was going to replace me. She went pale. I've seen it all, I said. The steps. The timeline. The way you were going to wear me down, move him in, steal this house, this family, piece by piece. She opened her mouth. I could see the gears turning, trying to find an angle, a soft excuse, a reason I might still give her the benefit of the doubt. But I wasn't him anymore. You didn't just cheat on me, I said. You tried to erase me. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I didn't mean for it to go that far. It started as a mistake. No, I cut in. Mistakes are accidents. You made decisions. Repeatedly. With full awareness. I stepped back. I'm not your husband anymore, Rachel. I'm the man you tried to destroy. And then I said the words I'd been waiting to say for months. Starting tomorrow, I'm filing for divorce. She gasped. I wasn't finished. And I'll be naming you and Lucas in a civil suit. Emotional fraud. Paternity deception. Collusion. Dan, please. No more please. No more pretending. She collapsed into the chair, face in her hands. And I just stood there, watching the truth finally land where it belonged. Because when someone burns down your house, you don't ask them why. You hand them the bill. You'd think the worst was behind me. You'd think that once I had the paternity test in one hand and the divorce papers in the other, I could finally breathe. But you'd be wrong. Because what I found next made everything before it look like a warm-up. It started with a phone call from Mark. You need to come see this, he said. Now. I met him at his office just before sunset. Same little brick building he'd worked out of since he left the force. Same scratched-up coffee table, same dusty blinds. But what he showed me, that was new. He handed me a file folder. Thick, worn, full of screenshots, printouts, and things that should have never existed. What am I looking at? I asked. Mark didn't answer. Just nodded for me to keep going. The first page was a background check. Not on me, on Lucas. Except he hadn't been using the name Lucas Porter lately. He'd started going by Daniel Porter. My name. There were online profiles. Job applications. Even a lease agreement draft for a condo he'd applied to. Using my name and a fake driver's license with his picture. It wasn't just identity theft. It was a full-blown impersonation. I stared at the document. Is this real? Mark nodded grimly. Dead serious. He's been building this for months. Bank accounts, email addresses, even called your old college alumni network to update his information. My stomach flipped. He was trying to erase you, Dan. Not just take your wife or your kid. He wanted your whole life. The next page showed printouts from a social media account. Profile name, Daniel P. Photos of Rachel, smiling, pregnant, with captions like, "Can't wait to be a father again." Photos of my kids. From what I could tell, Lucas had pulled them from Rachel's phone, posted them like they were his own. To the world, it looked like he was the loving husband, the father-to-be. And I was being quietly deleted. I sat back in the chair. No words. Just this low, slow-burning realization that I'd been in a game I didn't know I was playing. And the other guy had memorized every move I'd ever made. Mark finally spoke. He's smart. Strategic. This wasn't just lust, Dan. This was envy. Long-term. He's obsessed with becoming you. I nodded slowly. It made sense, in a sick way. Lucas had always been the flashy one. The risk-taker. The screw-up. Me? I was the dependable brother. The stable one. The one who worked his way through college, got married, bought a house, raised a family. I never rubbed it in his face. But I didn't have to. He saw what I had. And he hated me for it. That night, I didn't go home. I drove past the house. Our house. And kept going until I reached the overlook where Rachel and I used to sit before we had kids. I parked, killed the engine, and just sat there. Not to cry, not to think, just to breathe. Because I knew what came next. I was done reacting. Now, it was time to respond. The next morning, I came back with a new energy. Controlled. Cold. Rachel was in the kitchen, pretending to read something. Her face pale. She knew what was coming. "I'm going to need your phone," I said simply. She didn't argue. Just handed it over. I scrolled. And there it was, an email she hadn't deleted. To landlord@capitalcondos.com. From daniel.porter@email.com. Excited to finalize everything this week. Rachel and the kids are ready for the move. This is a fresh start for us. Looking forward to signing as Daniel Porter. I looked up at her. You were going to move in with him. Under my name. She opened her mouth. But I'd heard enough lies to last me a lifetime. Rachel, you didn't just cheat on me. You became a tool in his plan. She tried to protest, tears now. I didn't know he was doing that, Dan. I swear. I didn't know about the documents or the accounts. I just shook my head. You knew enough. You knew he wanted what I had. And you helped him take it. That evening, I wrote 2 emails. One to my lawyer. The other? To Lucas. Subject, you want to be me? I know everything. The fake profiles. The lease application. The photos. You weren't just chasing my wife. You were chasing my life. So now I'm going to show you what it feels like to be me, when you lose everything you thought you stole. See you soon. Daniel. The courthouse was colder than I expected. Maybe it was the air conditioning. Maybe it was what I was doing there. I stood in front of the clerk's window, papers in hand, no hesitation in my voice. Filing for divorce, I said. The woman gave me a sympathetic glance, took the folder, stamped the first page, and handed me a copy. Just like that, 13 years of marriage reduced to a date and a docket number. But I wasn't done. Also filing a civil suit, I added, sliding over the second stack. She raised an eyebrow. Same parties. Same betrayal, I said. The documents were detailed. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. Conspiracy to defraud. Paternity deception. Unauthorized use of identity and likeness. Rachel and Lucas were both listed as defendants. I wasn't interested in money. This wasn't about revenge. It was about recording the truth, permanently, legally. I wanted the world to know. They didn't just break hearts, they broke laws. That afternoon, I called Lucas. Meet me, I said. Alone. You owe me that. He tried to stall. What's the point, Dan? You'll see. We met at a local diner just before dusk, the kind with sticky menus and cracked vinyl booths. The kind we used to ride our bikes to as kids. I got there first. When he walked in, I didn't stand. Didn't shake his hand. He sat across from me, looking a little thinner, like guilt was starting to eat at him. But his eyes still had that edge. The one that said, I always win. I smiled. You tried to become me. I said, no small talk. But you never figured out what that meant. He didn't respond. I leaned in. You thought it was about the house, the wife, the image. Pause. But you didn't understand. Being me means standing up when the floor gives out, taking every hit and staying on your feet. He looked away, jaw tight. You thought I'd roll over, that I'd walk away while you took everything. You underestimated me. Still silent. So I pulled out the copy of the civil filing and slid it across the table. His name, in bold, as a defendant, alongside Rachel. He read it, and for the first time since this started, Lucas blinked like a man who finally saw the drop-off ahead. What is this? Your future, I said. In writing. You're suing me? I shrugged. Why not? You already tried to steal my life. I'm just returning the paperwork. His mouth opened, closed, tried to form a defense, but there wasn't one. Not for what he'd done. Not for what was coming. You think this will fix it? He snapped. You think this will bring anything back? No, I said calm. Nothing's coming back. I looked him dead in the eye. But this? This is me closing the door you tried to crawl through. He stood up suddenly, knocking his coffee over, hands shaking. You're not better than me, he muttered. No, I said, standing too. I'm just still me. And that's something you'll never have. That night, I drove home with the windows down. No music. Just air. Fresh, sharp, clean. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. Not someone's fool. Not someone's victim. Just a man who knew who he was, and wasn't afraid to say it. She showed up angry. Not crying. Not begging. No apologies. Just fury wrapped in perfume and lipstick. She slammed the door behind her like she still had a right to be here. I got your little court letter, she snapped. Really classy move, Dan. I didn't respond. I just looked at her, really looked. This woman I'd built a life with, slept beside, raised children with, and realized I didn't recognize her anymore. You think this is justice? She said, waving the envelope like it was a weapon. You think dragging me into court is going to make you feel better? Still, I said nothing. Because this wasn't a conversation. This was a reveal. After everything I put into this marriage, she said, voice rising. You have the nerve to act like I'm the villain? I finally spoke. You put everything into Lucas, Rachel, not into this marriage. She scoffed. He listened to me. He saw me. You were always a safe bet. Reliable. Boring. There it was. The truth she'd been hiding behind all that fake guilt and forced affection. You just existed, she said. Like a piece of furniture. Useful, but invisible. I nodded slowly. So that's what I was to you. Yes, she snapped. You were predictable. You were good on paper. But you were never enough. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was surgical. I let it sit between us like a mirror. Then I said, and yet, you still needed me to believe the baby was mine. Still needed me to play the part while you and my brother rehearsed your little fantasy. She flinched, but only for a second. Her jaw set. I did what I had to do. And now, I said calmly, I'll do the same. I turned to the side table, picked up the second envelope, and held it out to her. She hesitated. What's that? An offer, I said. You signed the divorce papers quietly, no contest, and I don't pursue criminal fraud charges. I dropped the emotional damages suit and let you keep your reputation in front of the kids. Her face hardened. And if I don't, then you'll watch your name get dragged into every courtroom this county has. Every lie, every message, every tape. She looked at me like I'd become someone she didn't expect. And maybe I had. Who are you? She whispered. I stepped closer. I'm the man you thought was too weak to fight back. The divorce was finalized on a Wednesday. Cloudy. Cold. Nothing special in the sky. Rachel sat across from me at the attorney's office. She didn't look at me. Didn't speak. She just signed. One page. Then another. And another. At the bottom of the last, she paused. Her hand trembled, just barely. She looked up, finally. Her eyes were tired. Empty. I never thought it would end like this, she whispered. I nodded. No one does. She slid the papers across the table, stood, and left without a word. No hug. No goodbye. No tears. Just the soft click of heels down a hallway. And just like that, she was gone. I never saw her again. Lucas's end wasn't as quiet. 2 weeks after the civil suit was filed, investigators started digging deeper. Turns out, pretending to be your brother while opening accounts, misusing identity records, and forging digital signatures is very illegal, especially when paired with evidence of fraud, impersonation, and digital theft. Mark and my attorney handed over everything, documents, emails, screenshots, the fake lease with his face and my name on it. The prosecutor called it obsessive and calculated. The judge called it criminal impersonation and fraud. The sentence was firm. For years, Lucas tried to look defiant in court, but you could tell the walls were finally closing in. The charm didn't work here. The smirk didn't land. And the name he tried to steal was the same one that buried him.